Many tech leaders have a single, very simplistic yardstick for whether they and their team are doing fine. Did we ship what we were supposed to on the roadmap? And that's why so many of you might be getting things out. You might be shipping things and still you feel like you're treading water. You don't see the progress. This happens because we as leaders are missing the right metrics. And without the right metrics, it's very easy to not realize that we're staying put or we're not going in the right direction. In this video, we'll cover the 3 different areas where you need to have a clear metric for yourself as a leader, not about your organization. And having that, you'll be able to create an organization that gets better. You will be a leader that's not just trying not to drown, but actually is proactive and moves the team forward. You will feel like you're no longer treading water, and you'll create the organization that you deserve to lead. And you'll do that by following very simple concepts, and you'll see how you're no longer just focused on a feature, but you are suddenly actually leading, which I think is a very refreshing change. By the way, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aviv Ben-Yosef. I'm a tech executive coach and consultant, and I help people just like you create teams with leading, because life's too short to lead a mediocre team. Let's get to it. We actually have 3 different areas where we want to create metrics. The first one is, the things that's just right in front of you, the very short term. And many, when I talk about the short term, are focusing on what they're delivering. But first, before that, my metric should be, are you on fire? Hopefully not, but many don't realize that they're constantly on fire, constantly putting out fires. And when we're looking at that, this might not be the same sort of fires for everyone, because fires are things like, are you suffering from quality? Some people tell me no, but when I look at it, I see that they have now gotten to a point where, even without thinking about it, every time after they have a release, which they're doing less and less often because they see the cost of a release with all the things that happen after it, they now have it ingrained that after a release, everyone waits a day or two because they're waiting for all the incoming problems to emerge. I'm like, okay, if you have problems after a release, that's usually what we call quality issues. It means that we're doing things that aren't working. So, are you putting out quality fires constantly? Or do you find yourself always putting out people problems, people fires out, like people coming to you and you're always playing referee because people are fighting, because people can't decide about what to do. Maybe you notice that you have leaders who are constantly in need of you to nudge them and push them. When you have that, those are again fires. Maybe you don't feel like it's a fire because nothing is collapsing in front of you. But actually, if you constantly have to be putting your mind into those things, it means that your organization, the foundations of it are not going well. So, Are You on Fire is about ensuring that you have the basics go, okay? And the basics are also delivering what we have on the roadmap usually, but it's also about ensuring that we have a healthy team, that people are not constantly burning out, having to work insane hours because things are not working, because we are agreeing to deadlines that don't make any sense, because people are quitting and therefore others have to work really hard, or all sorts of things. If that's the case, you have to, as a leader, put an end to that and very rapidly make changes to make things better. Otherwise, you're trying to do things, building on top of a foundation that's not stable. Things will collapse one way or another, and it just doesn't make sense to focus on the long-term picture, which I just recently had someone who was talking to me about the different changes that they want to do, and yet every time when we talked, I noticed that nothing was happening, and I'm like, hey, where's the time going? And then I realized they were actually suffering from a lot of these problems. And nothing was major, but it was the death by 1,000 paper cuts, because they had a lot of things that weren't completely fine, and that meant that they never were able to focus on something because they were always pulled into this and that, etc. We had to get that done before we could move on to the next step. So, stop being on fire. It's a good recommendation, okay? You see you're on fire, stop, drop, and roll. Number 2 are your mid-range goals, which is about what are you actively doing in your organization. This is the second metric. When I ask people, and I say usually, what do you expect to see implemented in the organization over the next 3 to 6 months? Sometimes 2, depending on how fast you are able to move. But this is not about what features you will deploy. This is about what changes you're doing as a leader when it comes to coaching your people, when it comes to the organizational structure, having different teams, having better ways of operating, processes, improving your collaboration, whatever it is. These are the leadership projects that you're taking on. And if you don't have these, you're going to be in a problem, because this is about, okay, we have the basics, the first step. But how are you translating maybe your vision, your dreams into actually moving forward? You have to break things into tangible blocks that you're pushing forward. Otherwise, it's very easy to keep thinking about the bigger picture and never get anything done. So I really recommend having a clear goal for yourself about what you want to see implemented in the next, again, quarter or so. Usually, depending on the size of the organization, we're talking about less than 4 things, like 1, 2, 3 things. And you want to be very clear about what you want to have done by that time frame. It's not like, will be better. That's way too vague. You want to have something like, when we deploy, we no longer have to spend X amount of hours doing this or that, because we just implemented a much better way of deployments. We have a better test suite because we've broken it down so that we don't have to deploy everything together, so that it's not the entire company on edge, but each time the specific team that's doing something is doing it, whatever. And I'm just throwing around ideas and examples I've seen, but creating these changes so that the organization is better, more stable. And think about it just like the features, the iterations that you have on the product. These are iterations on the organization. And the more you make, the better organization you ought to have at the end. So that's what we want. We have to have these iterations, and you have to be very clear about which iterations you're currently doing, what time frame you have defined for yourself, because otherwise it's just going to get stretched out like everything else in life. And when you have that clarity, you can start building that momentum, start moving forward. That brings us to the last metric, your long-term goals. Long-term is, depending on who you are, long-term is usually somewhere between 12 to 18 months, might be a bit less, might be a bit more. But this is about the bigger picture changes you want to do. If you look at your team, take a second and think, where should my team be a year from today, a year and a half, to be an amazing source of value, source of impact for the company? You look at it and you're thinking, okay, probably we will need to have people across the globe because I know the company wants to expand. Maybe you want to think about that huge scale you have. Whatever it is, you need to have a second to think about those bigger picture things and be clear about where you're driving. This will then help you in the second level, in the mid-range, to break it down and decide how you're going to get there. But the long term is crucial so that you know what your long-term destination is. You know where you're aiming. You're not just doing things for the sake of doing things, which is very easy, but you try to understand your strategy, your vision, and ensure that all of these little blocks, all of those iterations that you're doing on your organization are all part of a bigger vision and they all fit together. So you're doing these things, each one by itself is beneficial, but when you understand where you're going, all of a sudden all of these are direct, it becomes one big vector as opposed to being spread out in a bunch of different directions. And this is how we create an organization that after a year or two, you look back and like, wow, we've achieved amazing things. I have an organization that's actually moving much faster, even though we now have all of this extra code, even though we have more people, more processes, whatever, we're still just getting better. That's the sort of organization you deserve to lead and the organization your employees deserve to have around them. It's possible and you can do it. The most important takeaway here is to understand that you as a leader have to manage all three. Yes, imagine a Venn diagram. Doing only one or two is just not enough. If you're focusing on the short term and the midterm, usually you're just drifting. You're doing things, but you don't know where you're headed. And it's very easy to end up in an organization that has done a lot, but is, a year later isn't where the company actually needs you to be. If you're focusing only on the long term, as I said earlier, these are the sort of examples that I often see that people know how to define very interesting things and very ambitious projects, but never get to actually actually implementing them because they're constantly putting out fires. You really have to have the entire things. You want to be right at the center of that Venn diagram to create an amazing organization. And if you need help getting there, my email's in the video description. Let me know. I'll be very happy to hop on a free diagnostic call. And that's it, really. What you want to do is to be clear about these 3 things. You can define them with yourself, you can define them with a coach, and start moving forward. That's it. If you have any questions or comments, let me know in my email or in the video comments. I'm always happy to hear from you. If you found this useful, please like and subscribe. It really helps. And I'll see you here in the next video.